You're listening to the Bear Down Chicago podcast with Logan Bradley, Ryan Dangle, Patrick Sheldon, Brendan Shagrew, and Jack Wright. The Bear Down Chicago podcast. Yeah, we're that Bears podcast.
All right, folks, welcome into another edition of the Bear Down Chicago podcast. I am your host, Ryan Dangle. Now, if you are watching on YouTube, you will notice that this is not my usual digs, nor my new digs. It is a little crazy. Hopefully everything is sounding okay. I'm at my neighbor's house. I'm going to bring in my right-hand man, the one, the only, Jack Wright. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can hit me at Ryan Dangle. That's D-E-N-G-E-L. If you want to get Jack on Twitter, it's at Bear Down Jack. Jack, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm trying to make the Bears head logo, even though it's not going to be a thing. I'm trying to still will it into existence to be a thing because it's my best favoritist logo.
I guess we're in the minority because some of the stuff that's being back and forth on Twitter is pretty crazy. But I put out my unpopular opinions. The Bears need a uniform update. They need to unretire some numbers, and that logo needs to be much more prominent than the C. It's time.
You want to keep the old schools in rotation, I assume, but then just have some sort of
absolutely.
Modern,
I love the color scheme. I'm totally down with that, but it's time. Do you know what I mean? Like even like the Lions, which this works out perfectly because we got our friends from the Roar of the Lions here today. Oh, yeah. Like I think that they've done a good job of of making slight uniform changes that still like give a nod to the history, but like give it a fresh look, dude. It's 2023, man. Let's do this. Let's shake this up.
I'm for it. I think baseball does a great job with it, and most of the other teams in the NFL have done a really good job with their alternatives.
Absolutely. So a couple quick programming notes for all of you. It is 2:00 in the afternoon in Chicagoland, but it's 8:00 at night for our friends in the UK who were just wonderful. We talk about this often. I'm so excited to have Matt and Steve on. They're just such good freaking dudes. And hey, we can talk trash about the rest of the NFC North. So at least we got that going for us, which is pretty nice. We will be here on Sunday. And Jack, this is big. I don't think we can say the name just yet. But we're going to have one of the members of the Chicago Bears 2006 Super Bowl team on our podcast Sunday night. How freaking cool is that, dude?
That is super exciting. I'm looking forward to that. And there's a preseason game. So like all of it. Together.
We got so much to talk about in so little time. For this episode, we're going to talk to our friends at Roar the Lions. And then after that, we've got a whole bunch of stuff from training camp. Brendan and I went, and I'm dropping in some media today. I got some pictures and some videos for all of you guys. So if you are one of our audio only listeners, come on, check us out on YouTube, Bear Down Chai Pod, just like you think. And we're here. You can see what those voices look like. And if you are one of our YouTube followers and you want to go back and listen to a little episode while you're driving the car, check us out, Spotify, iTunes, you name it, we are there. Jack, before we get into what's going on, we got some people we got to thank. The first one is our guy, Jeff Cadwalder. Our friend Jeff Cadwalder has been working hard since the beginning of the year to expand his real estate services to now include commercial properties. And he's been killing it. It doesn't matter if you're a business owner, a homeowner, or an investor. If you're looking to buy, sell, or lease commercial or residential properties, Jeff is our guy. Absolutely. Please give him a call or a text 630-254-4734. Visit Geneva Jeff Cadwalder. And if you do talk to Jeff, tell him that the guys at the Bear Down Chicago podcast say hello.
Ryan, as you know, iron sharpens iron. Real recognizes real. And at Sheridan's Barbershop, it's where traditional meets modern. Traditional barbershop care at Sheridan's Barbershop, located in historic downtown Wheaton, Illinois, has been serving the community for 69 years, plus 2. With 6 barbers open 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, they have appointments available to book online or by telephone at your convenience. You can go to Sheridan'sBarbershop.com or you can call 630-668-0137 and book yours today. Sheridan's Barbershop, where traditional meets modern.
Last little thing before we bring Matt and Steve on. I'm at my neighbor's house. They graciously let me stay here while my wife is sleeping in the place that I normally podcast from because our house is in total renovation. Oh, and by the way, she's 8 months pregnant. Oh, and by the way, today is her birthday. So like, biggest shout out to my wife who's like, yeah, go podcast. And I was like, are you sure? Is this a trick? And she's like, no, go do it. So shout out to my wife, Kate. I love you. Thank you. And shout out to Richard and Shar, my neighbors, for letting me use your space. I appreciate you. With that being said, I mean this sincerely. I love these guys. The banter that Steve and I had going earlier this week was fantastic. I love it. So let's bring in from the Roar of the Lions, Matt and Steve. Boys, how are you guys?
Doing well, guys. How are you doing?
Doing, you know what? Despite the fact that I have no working bathroom in my house, my floors are all torn up, and yeah, it's a total disaster. I'm doing pretty well. How about you guys?
It's just great to have like football on the horizon. Like it's been a drought. It's always a drought, and we always forget like how long the summer is. But it feels like it's around the corner. So the mood's buoyant over here.
Jack, you got to say your line, man.
It's beginning to feel a lot like football. And I think I watched quarterback and then I watched quarterback and then I watched last night's preseason game. And then I watched the first episode of Hard Knocks. I feel like I need to keep some of it in reserve because each time I get done watching these things, I'm so geeked up for football to start. And then I look at the calendar and I'm like, oh, shoot.
Oh, so, we're there tonight. First preseason game for the Lions at midnight our time, 6 p.m. Chicago time. So really pumped for that. Can't wait for us to get going.
I feel way better then about stealing your guys' Friday night. We're just getting you ready before the game, right?
Pumped up. Yes.
All right. So boys, just quick questions before we get into our Lions questions. Have you watched quarterback and are you watching Hard Knocks? Are you hate watching Hard Knocks with Aaron Rodgers, or are you feeling better now? Brendan was saying that he's not mad because Rodgers is now out of the division. So he's like, whatever, it's somebody else's problem. How do you guys feel about that?
I mean, Steve, you take it because I'm not watching either. So,
well, I think for the NFC North, this is like a historic season because and I think as fans we need to unite here because there's been a great veteran that's overshadowed the NFC North for a decade. And, he scored points on your team. He scored points on our team. And I think we just need to recognize the real and just wish him all the best in his new team because, we should be bigger than our petty rivalries. So I just want to wish Adam Thielen all the best for the Carolina Panthers. I just wanted to get that out of the way.
Bravo, a gracious man.
And as for Rodgers, as Conor McGregor would say, who the fuck's that guy?
Steve, careful with the language. Now.
We are a family-ish podcast and did warn Steve not to use that specific word, but that's okay.
But I echo the sentiment for sure.
I mean, I tweeted it last night and it was in our text thread. Just for anybody in our division, viewer discretion advised. The first 15 minutes of Hard Knocks is almost indescribable in terms of the love fest that the fans, the players, the coaches, and the media have for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's almost like at an embarrassing level to the organization how much fawning. And I get it, right? Like they're in desperate need of a quarterback, but it's not a good look. I mean, I know I have a ton of bias because I don't really like the guy because of the Packers, but I'm just telling you, viewer discretion is advised. It's
if all of the sudden someone of Aaron Rodgers' caliber walked into our division, into the Chicago Bears, I would be the same way because we're Bears fans and we haven't had a good quarterback in ever. So That's besides the point. Let's get into the questions. Boys, talk to us year 2 under Dan Campbell. How are you guys kind of feeling about this? You know, we talked, I think last time we were together, about your almost playoff run, knocking the Packers out of the playoffs. You know, just again, one more time, thank you from all of us to all of you guys for that. But just kind of give us the lay of the land. Where are you kind of feeling about that?
So just to say, going into year 3 now, by the way, with Dan Campbell.
Apologies.
First one, no, but we finished 3-13-1 year 1, 9-8 last year. So where are we as Lions fans? There are season predictions right now, and I'm sure we'll come on to that, but there are season predictions right now saying that the Lions are going to win the division with a 10-7 record. And the prevailing feeling from the majority of fans I speak to is, why are we so pessimistic? Like, that is below the expectation that the fans have for this team. And if you have a look at what Dan's done and Brad Holmes, the GM, has done from 2.5 years ago to now, there's only 8 players left on the 90-man roster that we have as a holdover from 2.5 years ago. So the team is completely revolutionized. It's exceptionally young. Like, there's no right for a team this young to have the expectation that it has. Frankly, it's probably unfair to the players. But they've played so damn well, especially down the stretch last year, that the hopes for this team have never been higher since I've been a fan. Since 2009, this is the most optimistic the Lions have ever felt about their team. Full stop. It's absolutely nuts. I can't believe the hype. But it's great. I've never felt like this about a team before.
Steve, what about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think the optimism broadly comes from the offense, because I think we feel now that we've got a really solid offensive unit, and it's not fragile. We could take a couple of injuries and still compete. I think the Teddy Bridgewater signing at QB was a bit of a message from the front office that they wanted to make sure that Goff getting injured just didn't derail what could be like a division-winning season. For me, that optimism about Ben Johnson and the offense and the really kind of explosive plays that we saw last year that got us out of trouble is slightly tempered by our defense, which was bad for most of last season. And this is Aiden Hutchinson's second season. And it does feel like something's building, but we've not seen them deliver it consistently. So that's kind of the only way I would moderate my optimism, because the defense has to get better.
I think that segues nicely into the next question in terms, and very specifically about the offseason for the Lions. What is an aspect that makes you feel especially confident about the offseason the Lions have had, and what's an aspect that maybe gives you a little bit of trepidation, a little bit of concern? Matt and then Steve, please.
I think they're both the same thing. So Steve alluded to the fact that the defense is the thing which potentially can hold this team back and tempers the optimism. The reason to be optimistic is because the Lions have addressed the defense heavily over the last 2.5 seasons. They've put the majority of money and draft resources into the defense. So, as he mentioned, Aiden's coming into year 2, but they drafted Jack Campbell, first round mid linebacker, which is not traditionally meant to be a good move, but if it works, it could be revolutionary. There's not very many good linebackers in the league, full stop. But Derek Barnes is meant to have taken a jump. We traded up for him 2 years ago, and he's flattered to deceive, but he's apparently much better. We've also brought in Cameron Sutton from the Steelers, 3 years, $30 million as our cornerback 1, outside corner. We've also got Emmanuel Mosley from the 49ers. He's got an injury problem at the moment, lingering from his time there. So we haven't been able to see him. They also took Brian Branch, who was meant to be the top safety in the draft, but fell to the middle of the second round. They also brought in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, potentially the best safety nickel in free agency. So they have invested a lot of resources in the area that is the worst for the team. And so the upside is, if that defense really does rebound and is even, mid-table, 16th in the league, well, if the offense is 5th again, that is potentially an NFC-worthy team. Not even just North. That could put them right up there into the trajectory of getting into the championship game. But it's also the thing which is its biggest weakness. If Campbell was a rookie linebacker, just doesn't quite read everything quite right, and CJ doesn't quite fit in the team, and Branch, he's had a great training camp, by the way. But, we all know that doesn't really translate to the NFL real. Rookies sometimes just take a little while. And it could be another team that's just another year away. So let's wait and see on that point.
Yeah, and I think it was our secondary that was really bad last season, and it wasn't helped by the fact we lost our best safety, Tracy Walker, to injury. But, with Kirby Joseph, who, famously picked Rodgers' last throw in the NFC North, and Branch looks an absolute stud. It really feels like there's some optimism, but I think we just need to see it on the field. And I think the first pick six that we get is going to take a lot of pressure off Lions fans in terms of how they're feeling every time the opposing offense gets on the field with the ball. And obviously, like, we're going to Kansas City and playing against Mahomes, so that's the ultimate test of anyone's secondary.
So you guys talked a little bit about Jack Campbell. You talked a little bit about Brian Branch. I know when we spoke last time that you felt that the slightly unorthodox approach that the Lions took in the draft, meaning that they got guys that they like, but maybe just not necessarily in the order that most people thought they should have gone. Do you still feel that strongly about it? I know, you're waiting on that first preseason game. It's a little early kind of still to tell, but do you still feel strongly about this draft?
Why don't you go first this time?
I was pretty shocked on draft night when we picked Jahmyr Gibbs. But I think that's because I was so focused on defense and the fact that, I really wanted them to invest in the defense first. But I can see exactly what they've done with Gibbs. And, Gibbs is a huge weapon that could absolutely revolutionize what is already a fantastic offense. And if he is as good as catching as everyone says, it's going to give us so many options. And we've seen last year that Ben Johnson is such a creative guy in terms of calling plays. And he got us out of a lot of jams that the defense, holes that the defense had dug us. And we were really, really pleased. Probably like one of the biggest wins of the offseason was keeping Ben Johnson. So, and I think also we see, Jack Campbell, we know why they picked him. He's a Dan Campbell guy. And he's someone who's going to be in the team for the next 5 to 10 seasons. So I'm feeling a lot better about it now. But at the time, I think a lot of us were pretty confused as to what was happening.
I think the results that we've seen out of training camp so far justify what they've done more than at the time, specifically. So Jahmyr Gibbs in camp has been repping 50% as a wide receiver and 50% as a running back. And actually, I think when push comes to shove, I think he's probably been repping more with the wide receivers than he has with the running backs. And at Alabama, I think it was about 80-20 in favor of running back. So we are very much trying to work him on creating his route tree. If you have a look at what he does at Alabama, it's a lot of hitches when he lines up as a wide receiver or he's a decoy. You don't really see him doing any slants or anything like that. But you do see him do like Texas routes out the backfield. So going over the middle when it's congested is very much in his repertoire. So it's just something that they've needed to develop. So if he is legitimately a wide receiver who plays running back, which I think is what they're trying to get out of him, then it makes a lot more sense what they've done there. And with Campbell, for me, that was kind of a wait and see if we have it. Because I know when you take people in the first round, you see teams preach, they have to earn it. We're not just going to give it to them. And teams are like, yeah, okay, you say that. Fans are like, okay, you say that. But come week one, they're starting. They are. Well, the Lions last year started 6th round linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez over some of the people they paid because he legitimately was playing better than them. So draft position plays absolutely no mind into who they're going to play. If you're ready, you're ready. And if you're not, you're not. And Jack Campbell started with the 3s, came up to the 2s, and he's now repping with the starters. And they legitimately, this team, this staff, do not do that if they're not ready. So he's at the point where he is our best linebacker alongside Anzalone. They two will start in the middle. And then Branch is just a revelation. Sam Laporta is probably the biggest offensive weapon we have on the team apart from Amara St. Brown. He's had a revolutionary camp. Now he's going to look a lot like TJ Hawkinson, which some people might be a bit surprised at, but I don't think a lot of Hawk in terms of his blocking ability. He's not very good at it, and Sam has a long way to go in that regard. But he's a very, very good guy with the ball in his hands. So when I have a look back at the draft, the Lions maybe didn't get max value, but in terms of production, they're all going to have it. And so I think they're looking at the next 5 years and just going, let's make the absolute best of this, and we'll worry about 10 years' time in 10 years' time.
That's just so interesting that you say that, Matt. You had me thinking of Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith did the exact same thing. The last Chicago Bears coach to bring his team to a Super Bowl. It didn't matter where you were in terms of dollar amount. He's going to put the best player. And I remember his first year, I think it was the 2004 season, Jack. Does that sound right?
I think so, yeah.
The 2004, and he ended up sitting a couple veterans for guys that were playing better. Dude, props to him. Props to him on that.
Matt, just a quick follow-up for the listeners. Matt's wearing this wonderful black shirt with blue lettering that says, "Restore the Roar." I'm just curious, when exactly was there a roar? And
there it is.
How will we be restoring it? Exactly?
I think it ended in 1959. I think that was our last NFL championship game. So yeah, then we didn't win that one either. That was 1958, and we did win it. I can't remember how it went. We had 3 and 4 years, and then I think we've been waiting for it ever since. I mean, that was a long time before my time. So it was a long time ago. But it's a lovely shirt.
It is absolutely lovely. Thanks for being a good sport on that, because there is a saying, "Don't throw rocks in glass houses," right? So, how are you feeling about the Teddy Bridgewater signing and also the David Montgomery signing?
So for Teddy, I think. Oh, sorry, Steve, you want to take it?
I'll just very quickly say that, kind of in terms of the long-term plan for the Lions, I think one of the most important people on the Detroit Lions roster is Hendon Hooker, because we know that Goff is not going to be the guy for the next 5 years, and the development of Hooker's got real potential, and I don't think the Lions are going to be in a position to take a top 5-6 draft pick in the first round in the next few years based on our current team, and that's me being quite optimistic. So the development of Hooker is so important. And I think rather than being pressured to kind of get over his injury and be ready to back up Goff, I think by putting Bridgewater's an older guy. He's at New Orleans. He was really good with the younger QBs. And I feel that's a really good move long term. I don't think we'll see Hooker on the field this season, and I'm quite happy with that. I don't know what you think, Matt.
Yeah, I very much think the same. Exactly the same. I was quite confident that Hooker would be able to take the reps if he needed to, but taking that pressure off him is important. And I mean, if you're saying that this team potentially can win the NFC North, and let's face it could get carried away and talk about the NFC, but first things first, we've not won the division since 91, so let's not take it for granted. If you were throwing a rookie who's had that injury recently, who's not had training camp really, that doesn't sound like a recipe for success. And Bridgewater had a down year with Miami last year, but he's had many seasons of really good play. I mean, even when he was in Carolina and they were looking to trade him away, they weren't looking to trade him away because he was bad. They were looking to trade him away because he was a guy who could probably win 9 games every year, and then you're kind of stuck in purgatory. Okay, fine. But that's still a guy who's going to let you go 500 every season. He's just not a world-class quarterback. So it's a great guy to bring in as a bridge, and especially for $2.5 million guaranteed. You're on a hiding to nothing really with that signing. It gives a good floor for what this offense can do. And him and Goff have a very similar skill set. They're going to be able to operate a very similar type of offense. Goff's deep ball is questionable, super accurate in the short to intermediate game, likes throwing it outside the numbers. Goff was a number 2 quarterback last season outside the numbers, which is insane to me given his reputation. And Bridgewater can do very much of the same stuff. Hyper accurate quarterback, career highs above 70% completion rates. So he's going to fit into this offense like a glove. Super smart too. And Montgomery as well was asking the question. And I mean, he's going to be the lead back. I know that Gibbs is listed as RB1, but I'm just talking about the fact that he's going to be a wide receiver too. Montgomery's going to take probably first and second down reps. And if Montgomery doesn't ball, this offense doesn't roll. We're going to be a run-first team. That's what Dan Campbell wants to do. 60% or 55-60% of the plays could be run plays. So Montgomery's going to have to take advantage of what he's got here in his offensive line. It's potentially the best offensive line he's ever had in his career, with respect to Bears teams of the past. And the best thing he can do is trust the blocking that he's going to be given, because the offensive line is going to open those holes. And last year, it didn't happen for this running game. And as much as we'll have a look back at the team and have a look at the record number of rushing touchdowns that we had, the majority of them were from the 1 yard line, just punch in. But there was so much left on the table where 5 yard runs could have been 20 yard runs. And Montgomery, they've put faith in him to be that guy to take it to the next level. So they're not only threatening it in the air with Laporta and Jameson Williams coming back and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but they're going to push it with Monty too and hope that both sides of that offensive game is elevated.
I think I said this when we talked last. Take good care of him. He's a high character, hardworking. He's a player that you love to cheer for. He's never going to be a razzle and dazzle 80-yard touchdown run guy, but he's a damn good running back, and you guys got a good one. And I was bummed that the Bears didn't get to sign him. I'm very happy with our running back room the way that it is, but I don't know, Demo, Monty, whatever you guys call him. Jack. What do you think, dude?
In terms of someone who runs behind their pads and finishes runs, I would say we've had nobody like him since Peyton. I mean, in terms of just not giving up on a run, he is one of the most physical downhill runners we've had. So I just don't know about, I think I was always left wanting more because there was not a lot of breakout runs, not a lot of runs in the open field, and not a lot of time spent in the end zone. And of course, we all know that the Bears offense desperately needs like guys that can find the end zone.
He's a one cut runner for sure.
It's kind of hard in the NFC North looking good as a running back as well, because in terms of being good behind offensive lines, you've been in a division with Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones, who've both shown when they're hitting the backfield, they're going to make significant yards and really do that good work. And so I think Monty's always been in their shadow a little bit, because similar type of player to both of them, kind of think similar skill sets, but just not quite as good as the two of them, but still really good. And I mean, Dan Campbell's been coming out and saying, oh, well, he was the guy we circled every time we faced the Bears. Like, this is the guy we need to shut down the team on offense because it runs through him. So we're hoping to bring that aspect of him to us.
This seems like go ahead.
No, please, Jack.
No, I mean, I think we're on this topic, so it really is another good transition. Bring us up to speed a little bit, because the Lions jettisoned some high-profile offensive players. Hawkinson, who you mentioned, Swift, who you mentioned, and Jamal Williams. Was that addition by subtraction? How do you look at that in Lions land?
I think the first thing with Hawkinson is they were going to need to pay him pretty soon. And Hawkinson is a guy that we really liked. We liked him when we drafted him, and he's been a great player, but he is limited, and he definitely has a ceiling which he's rubbed up against a lot. And principally, he's not the best blocker in the world. And although he's a great catcher of the ball, he's got a great pair of hands, he does have a tendency, the minute he catches the ball, to fall over, which is incredibly frustrating. He's not a big yards after the catch guy. Like, we've seen him break out a couple of times, but it's just been not enough for the money that they would need to invest in him. I think Jamal Williams, and I don't want to demean Jamal at all, because he's been a great high character guy, a real leader, but again, like someone that is great for punching the ball in the red zone, but he's got a limited skill set. He doesn't get enough yards after the catch, so it kind of feels like it feels like for every player that we've lost, we have improved. I mean, DeAndre Swift, again, it's massive potential, but just never on the field. Too many injuries, a bit of a question mark about his ability to kind of like pain manage in terms of getting back on the field after an injury. And, I mean, I bought his shirt 2 years ago because, I loved him so much. That's a classic curse of buying a shirt. He's been banged up ever since.
Yeah, I've got to agree. I think Jamal's the one we're going to miss the most, but that's, I think, a locker room thing. Like, he was so entertaining to just be a part of the team. You could see that morale was automatically improved by him being there. So we'll miss that. And, what was it? 17 touchdowns he had last year or something exceptional. Like, that's not to be sniffed at. But I think 10 of them, 11 of them were from the 1 yard line. Like, that's not repeatable. And it's good to have a guy who, when he needs 2 yards, can get 2 yards. Like, we shouldn't diminish what that brings. It was really important to us. Our hope is that Montgomery can do that and be more. And, the difference that you're paying him is $2 million extra a year, which, frankly, I didn't want to spend. That's a bit rich for me for David Montgomery. As much as I really enjoy him being here, the hope now is that he bears out that. But offensively, or just in general with the team, I don't think that we've lost a huge amount. Hockenson, in terms of the production, is what we maybe miss the most. But what is left on the table with Hockenson when he's in your team is that you have to play him as a slot receiver. You can't play him in line because he is he helps them on their way sometimes. He's just so bad at blocking. So when you say limited, there's that wrinkle to it. When you put him in line, the quarterback's got to watch out every time for where he is because pressure's coming through there. So you don't want to give that guy, what's Hockenson going to get in a re-up? He'll probably get 15 million, like top of tight end market money. But he's not a top end of the tight end market wide receiver. Wide receiver. He's not top of the market wide receiver. So at a tight end, we can't be paying you that money. And if we're not willing to do that, let's get something back for him. And in Sam Laporta, you've got someone who has similar receiving ability, but like Steve says, isn't going to fall down after the catch and will actually get yak.
So Matt, I guess I'm curious, are you just bummed, upset? I don't know what the right word is here, that he had to go to the Vikings as opposed to someone out of the division. Do you know what I mean? Because he was a weapon for them seemingly down the stretch.
He was. Power to him. I really am not bummed about him going to the Vikings. In fact, secretly, because I didn't want to pay him, and I know that they now have to, I'm quite glad, especially given that they're in massive cap trouble. Like, it was a win now move for a team that wasn't ready to win now. Despite the 13 wins, that Vikings team should have been, in their right mind, an 8-win team, maybe a 9-win team. They weren't better than that last year. They just got very, very lucky. I don't believe in this stuff of like, oh, it's a mentality thing. Like in those one-score games, sometimes you win them and sometimes you don't. The fact that they have to pay him or lose the value in the trade and let him go for nothing hurts them. So it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect for us.
Yeah.
Boys,
I'm not looking at the schedule and thinking, oh Christ, we've got to play TJ Hockenson twice a year. I mean, like, that's not entering my head.
That's fair. That's very, very fair. All right, boys, I'm going to give you you have to pick one. You only get to pick one. Are you more excited for this season for Amon-Ra St. Brown or Aiden Hutchinson? Let's go Steve and then Matt on this one. You have to pick just one and tell us why.
I know that Matt's going to go Amon-Ra St. Brown, so I'm going to pick Aiden Hutchinson. Apparently Hutchinson has really bulked up. So everyone said, he's always had like a good upper body strength, but he'd got like a broken leg maybe in his first season at Michigan, and he's never like been as developed like below the waist. And I know, I'm getting myself in a mess there. Let me try and rephrase this.
Wow. We're getting in-depth coverage here. Unexpected.
So apparently he's been in the weight room and, there's some real development in terms of his lower body strength. He's looking absolutely razor sharp. Jack was saying iron sharpens iron. I mean, imagine him and Penei Sewell going at it like, for practice. And we saw a lot from him last season. He had a bit of a quieter spell in the middle of the season, but he's got a lot more talent around him now on that defensive line, and I think he's going to absolutely ball out this season. Absolutely ball out. And he really needs to, in terms of the defense needs a spear. It needs to have someone who is going to be just a constant pain in the side. And I think he's that guy. Absolutely.
Just, Matt, before you throw in, that's how you know it's a good question. Both of them, the reaction on their faces when I asked. So I'm happy with that one. Matt, let's hear your response.
I still can't choose, but I guess I'll take Amon-Ra St. Brown since he's gone Aiden. But I mean, Aiden, man, oh my God, he looks amazing. Not just below the waist. But with Amon-Ra, so we're going into year 3 with Amon-Ra. He was the 4th round pick, the first year round for this regime, and he was the number 2 ranked PFF wide receiver last season. I mean, he's a 4th round pick. This doesn't happen very often. You have a look at his mentality, the way he treats everyone around him, the game, the seriousness of it. I mean, the guy's got no chill. Like, I hope he has some fun somewhere, but like, the guy's all business. Still catches 202 balls from the jugs machine after every practice. Can still reel off those 15 names that were taken before him as wide receivers in that 2021 NFL draft. And he will be eligible for a contract re-up after this season. And the Lions will be re-signing him after this season 1 year early because they cannot afford to let him get anywhere near free agency. I've already postulated the potential contract, and I know that he's a slot receiver. He will get more than $30 million a year. The words sound ridiculous when you say them because what slot receiver outside of Tyreek Hill is worth that money? But if Amon-Ra gets injured, this offense doesn't work. Never mind Jared Goff. If Amon-Ra goes down, this team is not doing much because he is everything. He is all of it. His separation from the spot that he gets shouldn't be possible. The routes are so crisp, but the release is so good. And he's just able to turn upfield without missing a beat. The best thing about him is that he's consistent because he does so much training and so much hard work. He does it every single time without fail. Like, he had 2 drops in camp a couple of days ago. First time he dropped more than 1 ball in a day. And he was beside himself angry because he doesn't do that. And that's the standard that he sets for himself. But then when you have a look at the effect that has on everyone else, you've got Jameson Williams, who has been questioned a little bit in this offseason, I think unfairly. But Jameson in presses is saying, Amon-Ra's the example we all have to follow. You've got people like Khalif Raymond, who is the most explosive, fastest guy on the team, apart from Jameson Williams. And he's saying, I can't keep up with this guy. Even though, he runs a 4.34 and Amon-Ra runs a 4.6, but you can't beat him. And that's just testament to who he is. So he might go for 1,500 yards this season, all-purpose yards. He will line up out of the backfield as well as be that slot guy. He's also taking reps at the Z. He's a do-it-all player, and he's going to be the MVP of this team.
It's interesting. Jason Hirschhorn, who we just had on, he's our Packers guy from the Leap. He basically was saying if Justin Jefferson isn't in the NFC North, everyone's talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown. That it's a very different thing. But when you have possibly the best wide receiver in the game right now, playing for the Vikings, that it kind of overshadows a little bit. But yeah, high praise all across the NFC North for him, for sure.
Matt, you broached it a bit at the beginning, talking about the overall expectations for the Lions and their 2023 season. But let's go back to that a little bit. What are your expectations for the 2023 Lions, Steve, and then Matt?
I mean, I think we have to win the division. Like, this is our time slot. We've got a window of opportunity with the team that we've got. And we know that you guys in Chicago, you're kind of like coming through a rebuild, and I think me and Matt both think that you're going to improve this year, but probably still not have a winning season, but be a lot better. The Packers, this looks like the most disarray that they've ever been in, and we've got the Jordan Love question, and then we've got a Vikings team that kind of flattered to deceive a lot of the time last year, won a lot of one possession games, and made it to the playoffs, but then, lost to a pretty average New York Giants team. So if we can't win it this season, I'm not sure when we can. Obviously, our record last year was hampered by that, going 1-6, 1-7. I think 1-6. I think we were at one point by Thanksgiving. That's not going to happen this season, even though we've got a tough start with, I think, playing Seattle and Kansas City quite early on. But, in terms of our NFC North record, we were 5-1 last season. We lost one close game against the Vikings and won the other 5. And I'm expecting kind of like 10-7, 11-6 as like a minimum this season. I think that has to be like our expectations, particularly in terms of like, how we've done in free agency and we've had a good draft.
Yeah, I very much the same with Steve in terms of expectation. I think that might be a little low. I mean, the Lions, we know that the NFC is the weaker conference, right? It's not just all talk. The Chargers would be a very good team in the NFC, and they're not in the AFC, and that's the kind of barometer for me. But in the NFC, there's no reason why the Lions shouldn't be winning 12 games. Really, you have a look at the schedule, and it depends how you rebound after the Kansas City game, if that is indeed a loss. I don't think there's a Lions fan out there which isn't going, oh, well, I'll write it off, and if we win, that's great, but I just want to give them a good game. If we win that, great. But if we lose that, how do we rebound week 2? That's the biggest question of this season, because we rebound with a win and get that momentum going. And this could be a historic team for the side. Like, the offense shouldn't be retreating from 5th overall. It should still be a top 5 offense, because you have a look at all of the underlying advanced metrics of this team. It's not just that it was lucky or anything like that. It's well designed. It works. Goff is the perfect guy for this offense. He's answered the questions required of him to say that he's going to be the guy, at least for the short term, because he operates what Ben Johnson wants to put out there with precision, and he gets the absolute most out of the players that are there. So the offense shouldn't be taking a step back. In fact, I expect it to get better. I don't know whether that means the rest of the teams around them will also get better and they'll still be around where they are, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was a top 3 unit. And then on defense, I mean, Hutchinson got 9.5 sacks last year, and he looks so much better than he did last season. I can't speak to how much better he looks, because last season he'd just been repping and training for the combine. He hasn't had to do any of that. He's actually just focused on being game ready from week 1. And it's made a massive difference. In camp, he's destroying everyone apart from Penei Sewell. In joint practices, he's destroying the Giants guys. Like, it looks fantastic. So if he doesn't get 12 or 13 sacks, I almost think that's disappointing for Hutch. And then we've got Josh Pascal back after injury. He was a 2nd-round pick in the previous year. He looks fantastic too. If Jack Campbell hits, if Brian Branch hits, this could also be like a top 10 defense. We could be looking at one of the best teams in the NFL, full stop. Never mind the NFC. And that's where like the height of expectation is, right? That's not that is the Kool-Aid chugging part of it. But if you're talking about expectation, the Lions are always going to go, oh, I'll be downcast about it because what if I get hurt again? Well, I'm going to consider what things could be like if you really hit the top of it. The top of expectation for this team could be like 15 wins. And I know that's ridiculous, but we could also win 8. We could win 7 or 8 games.
Don't say it, Matt. Don't say this shit out loud.
The great thing about this division, though, can I just say, the great thing about this division is that all 4 teams could have a losing season and all 4 teams could have a winning season. It's unbelievable how he fights. It's so good. It's so exciting.
Jack, what? That's a segue into your question. We'll hold off on my question until. So, boys, when answering Jack's question, save a little bit for specifics about the Bears.
Yeah, so look, I think you did it a little bit already, Matt, but we're going to hold your feet to the fire a little bit, both of you. Rank the division. How do you think how's it going to pan out from first to worst? And talk about the Packers.
Yeah. Our good friend Heidi just chimed in, was waiting to hear about their view on the Packers. So yeah, Heidi, great. We're curious to hear about that as well.
Steven, then Matt, please.
So I was talking to Ryan earlier in the week when we were talking about this show, and I said to him that the opening match between the Bears and the Packers, if I was a guy that liked to bet, I would be terrified to place a cent on that game because I have no idea what's going to happen. I've no idea what kind of offense that Green Bay is going to look like. with Jordan Love and then some like really green wide receiver core, and the defense with so many questions. I just don't know where the Bears and the Packers, how their respective rise and fall is going to like coincide in terms of a record, because I think the Bears are going to be better and I think the Packers are going to be worse. But it's just trying to rank what that looks like in terms of win. I think the Vikings aren't going to be as bad in terms of fall off as people think, because they've, even though they've lost Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook, they've made some good additions. They've got Jordan Addison in to replace Thielen, which I think is a good move. The defense, they've got rid of Ed Donatel, the DC. So you would expect the defense to be better. And also, like, Kevin O'Connell's scheme on offense is notoriously difficult to learn. We were talking about quarterback Jack, and Kirk was basically saying that he didn't really get comfortable with the offensive playbook till about week 10. So I think there's still room for the Vikings offense to be good next season. But I'm going to say the Lions are going to win it. But I think very, very closely second will be the Vikings. And then I think the Packers and the Bears are both going to be around the 6-11, 7-10 mark.
No, that's not it. That's not it for me. We'll come on to the Bears in a minute, but in terms of rankings, I am going to go Lions, Bears, Packers, Vikings. I do think that the Vikings are going to fall off, contrary to what Steve was just saying. So they're such a boom or bust team, right? And they hit the boom last year. And I don't think that necessarily means they're going to hit the bust this year. But the defense is bad. And I know they've managed to actually keep Danielle Hunter, but I don't think the defense does enough for me. The cornerbacks are still poor. The players that they've invested in the draft because of injury aren't working out. Lewis Seen isn't a starter. And Andrew Booth, is he ever going to play in the NFL? Like, those are two picks you're looking at that they got in trades from us, actually, I think, who don't look like they're working out right now. So I think the Vikings are going to find that unless their offense can fire them to nail-biting shootout wins, they're going to lose a lot of narrow games. And I think that you actually find that it might even be that their point differential gets better because they had 13 wins but a negative point differential last year. I think they could have a positive point differential but only win like 7 or 8 games. But I think the Packers are going to be in that sort of 500 range, 8-9, 9-8. I think Love is not bad enough that the arse is going to fall out of it, but I don't think he's good enough to make them look great. And then the Bears don't have to get much better to end up winning a lot of games. Maybe that's the next question. So, but for the Lions, you have to win this division. There's no other option here because fundamentally, I think you have the most continuity with your playing staff and your coaching staff of all of the teams in the league. The foundations were already there, and then you've taken luxury players on top. That should be the icing on the cake for us.
So this is
Do you think with Brian Flores coaching the defense at the Vikings, I mean, when you think about what Flores did to that really poor Miami Dolphins team about 3 seasons ago, and he really got that defense like some respect on their name, I think he's going to do wonders with trying to sort out that Vikings defense, which was a mess last year.
I don't think they have the personnel to do it. Just don't.
It's fair. Boys, it's interesting is this is the third part of a 3-part series around the NFC North, and watching Vikings fans and watching Packers fans squirm at the thought of the Lions out in front. Honestly, boys, I love the Chicago Bears. I don't see them winning the division this year. I do think it's yours. And I think we talked about this one of the times that we've had you guys on. I'm all for it. I want to see it. I want to see a shakeup in the division. I don't want to see the Green Bay Packers. And Matt, something that you also said has been repeated a couple times is if Jordan Love is good enough to string the Packers along, but not good enough to be the guy, everybody wins. Everybody wins because, they don't get a great quarterback in this upcoming draft. They hang on to him for a little bit longer than they should. That's the quarterback. We want him to be Mitch Trubisky.
He's the quarterback we want and deserve for that Packers team.
Yes.
That's rough. I'm not sure I would wish that on my. Well, yeah, I would wish that on my worst enemy. So it's also interesting to note, gentlemen, that I believe all of our around the NFC North experts picked their team to win the division. So for whatever that's worth.
Oh man,
it's that time of year. It's that time of year.
Silly season.
Well, so boys, you kind of already hit it. So just overall quick thoughts on the Bears off season, from a Lions perspective, just anything about the draft, anything about the Bears off season. I think you kind of already have alluded much to how you feel about this Bears team, but just anything that you maybe have missed thus far.
Well, I mean, I think when you look at the Bears offense, you've got your quarterback of the future, you would hope. Let's say for now, Fields is the guy. But then like last year, his receiving core, like Equanimous and Brown, was kind of like his main target. And like this season, you've got DJ Moore, you've got Claypool, who, I thought was a really, really strong player for the Steelers, and I think has got more in the tank.
He's had a great
Darnell
camp.
Mooney.
A great camp.
Yep, absolutely. Darnell Mooney, you've got Komet. I mean, that's not a bad offensive array of weapons. I think my worry with the Bears is in the trenches on both sides, because I think your O-line is got better, but there's still holes in it. And I just don't know what your D-line is. I don't know what your pass rush is. And I think so. Those are my big questions, and that's why I'm kind of thinking the Bears are going to finish winning 6 or 7 games next season, because I think there's a lot of issues in the trenches.
I know that Ant, before I came on this show, one of our other guys said, try not to butter them up too much, but I can't help myself. The Bears last season they started 2-1, right? And then they fell off massively, but Fields didn't. And was a big reason why the majority of the games he lost were competitive and were pretty close. A couple of games weren't, but in the main, Chicago were in pretty much every game. And, he destroyed us. A couple of both games, he almost ran for 200 yards by himself, I think. Like, it's ridiculous. And, he's just a running back. Well, he's not. We've seen that he's not throughout his career that he can throw a pass. He just gets a bit skittish when he knows he has to escape the pocket. I am not a fan of Cody Whitehair, but I think the other 4 guys on the line are great. I think they could be really, really good. I know the Bears fans are higher on Braxton Jones than pretty much everyone else is, but he's going to prove people wrong, I think. I'm a fan of Darnell Wright. I still think he was taken too high, but he's still a good player. That's not to detract from him as a player. I'm a fan of Nate Davis, and Tevin Jenkins is an absolute beast. So on the offensive side of the line, I'm okay with it. And on defense, okay, fine, I wasn't massively enamored with it, but DeMarcus Walker and now Yannick Ngakoue is going to work out fine. So can you get the interior pressure? Justin Jones, Gervin Dexter, Andrew Billings, I don't know. It's not setting the world on fire, but I think that if you can't set the world on fire, stop the run. And I think that Gervin Dexter can do that. So I don't think that your defensive line is going to blow people away. You're going to be putting a lot on the plate with your linebackers, which you've invested heavily in. So you kind of saw that coming. If Tremaine and TJ work out, then this defense could be good. And then you're just hoping that Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson and Kyler Gordon are something. And if they are, I mean, the Bears have got all the upward trajectory in the world. I mean, Roschon Johnson, I thought is a luxury pick, really, because in your running back room, you've got Khalil Herbert, who's clearly running back 1, but Donta Foreman, who I think should be a running back 1 somewhere else. Donta Foreman is incredible. Like, you saw him, what he's done in his previous stops. I'm not even sure if I've got the right guy. He was the guy who backed up King Henry, right, in Tennessee?
Yep, he was.
Yeah, so when Henry went down, Foreman looked better. And I don't really know how that's possible with the rushing leader going down. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, they look better in the run. But he was violent. He's massive. But he's also more efficient than Derrick Henry was. So to have him as a running back too is ridiculous. Roschon Johnson, I don't know how many touches he gets. But never mind. Claypool, your number 3, great, because that means Equanimeous St. Brown isn't in there. Maybe something good comes of him. I was a big believer in him in Pittsburgh. I think he'll turn it around. Darnell Mooney, legit number 2 now. DJ Moore, fantastic. The Bears should be a plus 500 team. They really should be. And if they're not, I'm not saying questions start arising, because I think the transition is working well. If you win 8 games, okay, fine. But 9 games really should be achievable for this team.
Matt, you're saying all of the things that I feel like I've been saying over the last couple of weeks. I think you and Steve might be better Bears fans, more informed Bears fans than some Bears fans. Yeah, legitimately, Steve, I mean, you talking about the defensive line, that's a big question mark. The offensive line, especially the health of the offensive line, you guys really, you nailed a lot of the points that I think we've been talking about for a while. So I say to you guys, bravo. Gentlemen, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Before you get out of here, do you have any questions for us? Is there anything that we missed, anything that we should be talking about that you're looking forward to, particularly this season? Anything at all that you guys want to talk about? Let's go Steve and then Matt.
I guess I was going to ask you guys in terms of looking at the Lions, when we play you first time and you're, just before the game, you're looking at like the roster. Who are the players that you like scare you on the Lions? And who are the players that you think, yeah, we can do some damage against these guys? Where do you think that lies?
Jack, do you mind if I take this one first?
Go ahead.
I mean, I think it's obviously the guys that I wanted to talk about. Amon-Ra St. Brown. We feel really good about the Chicago Bears secondary, but if there's no pass rush, that's a lot of time on an island for Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, or Kyler Gordon, any one of these guys. And so that he definitely worries me. And Hutch, with the offensive line being bad, I don't think this is a great offensive line. It's definitely better than it was last year. Especially if he's thicker in the legs, thicker under the waist. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but if he's in any way improved, that definitely, I think that worries me. I think, the Chicago Bears run the football. And while the offensive line was atrocious last year in terms of pass protection, probably the worst in the NFL, they could run block. They could run block for David Montgomery. They could run block for Khalil Herbert. They could run block for Justin Fields. And I do think that the Bears have had a lot of success running the football against the Detroit Lions, historically speaking. And I do see that trend kind of continuing. That's just me.
It was who on the Lions gives us the most fear. Is that what it was?
Yep. Yeah.
I think that's a great answer and a great question. It'll be really interesting to see what Jameson Williams can do when it does come together for him in terms of just sheer talent. Yikes. And then especially if St. Brown and Jameson Williams start to become a 1-2 punch, and then defenses have to begin to react to it. That's going to be tough. As Ryan said, we do think our secondary is pretty good, and the linebackers we picked up, I think, were in a response to a league that has gone to passing the ball with greater frequency. So linebackers that can hopefully fill the run, but can definitely run with slot receivers and running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield. So in some ways, I feel like we geared our defense in ways to be able to respond better to the type of offense that Detroit is beginning to present. There's no way to avoid a fear of Aiden Hutchinson. I think he's a premier player. He's going to continue to get better. He's a dominant pass rusher, and we're going to really get a good sense of the extent to which our offensive line has improved.
Matt, what about you?
2 things from me. 1, are you looking forward to Aaron Rodgers finishing last in the division for the first time ever, maybe? And 2, are there more Bears-related question, I guess. So we talked about the defensive line maybe not quite being there. Is there any other positions, or is there someone at that sort of defensive tackle position that you guys are looking to perhaps bring in to get better? Because clearly Ngakoue has been waiting in the wings for someone to pick him up post the majority of training camp, as a lot of edge players do. So is there maybe someone that's on your radar in any position to try and improve the Bears?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, I was looking up something really quick. So I think the quick answer is no, not really. I know there was some talk about Houston maybe coming in as like a 1-2 punch to Yannick Ngakoue. I think they want to see what their draft picks can do. Jervon Dexter is one that I know has had a really, really, really good camp. They're really excited about Zach Pickens to see what he could do as well on the defensive line. I think it's, and especially with Yannick coming in, the mentorship that he could possibly have for second-year player like Dominique Robinson, in the hopes that those guys can kind of develop. We are not in the position the Detroit Lions are, where I really feel like what you guys said was right. You should be winning this division. This is your time to win the division. I think if the Bears were a year ahead in this rebuild, then maybe we're having a different conversation trying to bring in someone. But I honestly, I think that at this point, unless it was a center that somehow got cut by somewhere else, I think this team is probably the one that's going to be, headed into week 1 against the Green Bay Packers.
All right.
For the first question, I mean, yeah, I think it sets up just perfectly, like I said, for that first episode of Hard Knocks to be filled with joy and elation. I will be shocked if it doesn't just go right off the rails at some point. I mean, to paint, Aaron Rodgers, he's just coming off so sweet right now. Like, he's such a good guy. I have long believed that he is the type of guy who can tear a team apart from the inside. Now, he's great in terms of his skills and abilities, a Hall of Fame level quarterback. There's no doubting that. He can make every throw. He's super intelligent football wise, but when things don't go his way and he decides to be, a little bitch, he's a little bitch.
The New York media, when something doesn't go well, he's not ready for that.
No,
at all.
I mean, and he's willing to throw his teammates under the bus and willing to throw his offensive coordinator under the bus like that. So, if they're able to go through periods of duress and still somehow come out clean in all of this, I will be amazed. to be
the thing that goes underrated in that division is that the Patriots have a working offensive coordinator now. So it's not even like you can say they're definitely going to finish ahead of the Pats. Like, the Pats are going to be a much better team. Mac Jones showed he could win 10 games 2 years ago.
Right.
So I really think they are potentially joint 3rd or 4th in that division. It's absolutely beautiful.
I think as well from an NFC North perspective, how bad does Rodgers' situation now in New York make the Packers front office seem, in terms of the fact that Rodgers has gone to the Jets and he's doing his best imitation of normal. I mean, he's been to all the OTAs, he's turned up for all the camps. He's not set up like an isolation tank, and he's not dropping acid in the locker room. He's doing his best pretense to be normal. And to me, that's all about Robert Saleh. And Robert Saleh's obviously said, if you come here, I don't want any of your BS. And it just shows you how much the Packers organization has indulged, his kind of crybaby tantrums in the last 5 seasons. So, it says a lot about that organization. I think what we're seeing now in New York, but it won't last.
True. And that juxtaposed with the way that they've handled Love is going to be really fascinating, because we don't know what Jordan Love is. But the fact that he's been in the organization this will be his 4th year, and he was inactive his entire 1st year. We were talking a little bit. It's just really fascinating to see how some quarterbacks are just thrown to the wolves immediately. And sometimes they respond and sometimes they don't. And some are slow played. And so far, it doesn't look like the slow play has worked out. But again, and you said it, Steve, we really have no idea what we're going to see on week 1, because we joked, we thought Seattle was terrible last year preseason, and Seattle had a pretty damn good year. So most of this, is talk, and that's all it is. But maybe it's just us really hoping that the Packers will burn.
A lot of pressure for Jordan Love. A lot of pressure to follow Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Matt, Steve, we cannot thank you guys enough. We love this pod could go on for 3 hours. We could talk football with you guys for forever. We know you got a game to get prepped for. Why don't you run us through, guys, how we can follow, especially with all the stuff Steve, I know you do for the NFL Scotland. And Matt, I know, you guys do college football stuff at Roar of the Lions. You have so much stuff going on. Run us through all that stuff before we say our goodbyes.
Yes, so Ant and Ryan, I think probably still currently are live doing the college football show. So they are junkies for the college game, and it really helps our draft prep, actually. So they're currently going through a series where they're displaying the independents and the group of 5 teams in detail. And I mean, like 3-hour shows per conference. It's not of this world, but Ant and Ryan are suckers for punishment. So, and then we've got our own main show, which runs twice a week through the season. It's on all the normal social medias and on YouTube and Twitch, Roar of the Lions UK. And we've got a website that we kind of do, but it's kind of being left behind a little bit by the blog stuff that we're not doing as much of as I'd like, but there we go. So Roar of the Lions UK, YouTube and Twitch, live and on all normal podcast streams. And Steve, NFL Scotland?
NFL Scotland, yeah, I'll be putting out my season preview for the NFC North in the next couple of weeks. So I will link that to you guys on your via Twitter.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for stopping in at the Bear Down Chicago podcast. We appreciate you, and we're very much looking forward to our next conversation, boys.
Can't wait.
Take care, gentlemen.
Great to see you.
Those guys are amazing. I love chatting with them. They're just the best guys, and just so every time we laugh.
Always,
every time.
Yeah, I think, I've been in the habit recently of saying, like, everybody can fan how they want to fan. But in my heart of hearts, folks like, Steve and Matt, who are so detailed and so in tune with the team and so passionate about the team, those are my type of fans. I love, like, that they know not only, as you said, about their team so much, but like their knowledge of the Bears and other teams in the division is, it's expert knowledge. It's really pretty cool.
Very, very true. Let's switch gears completely. Let's talk about training camp. Before we do, you all have to indulge me for just 1 second. Here's a video of my daughter saying "Bear Down Chicago Bears." She's just turned 2. So please just indulge me for. What are we doing? Saying "Go Bears"? Yeah. Da Bears. Can you say it? Da Bears. Da Bears.
That's awesome.
Sorry, dude. Just had to do it. Okay, and one more. This is Brendan and I reporting back from training camp. We got to go, and we're going to talk about it just a little bit. So here we go. This is our recap from Bears training camp. All right, so Brendan, camp just wrapped up for today. Some guys that stood out to you. Talk to me.
Yeah, so a couple of them. First off, Equinemius St. Brown. Unfortunately, he got hurt on the 7-on-7 drill, but he filled in for Chase Claypool.
Looked good.
Looked really good. Had some great grabs. Micah Baskerville, the linebacker out of nowhere.
That pick 6 was awesome.
Great pick 6. He had 2 interceptions. He had some great plays in the run defense. Tristan Ebner. Remember Tristan Ebner?
I thought there was no way, and all of a sudden we all looked in the end zone and we're like, was that 25? It was.
Yeah,
it was 25.
Great big. I think it was 70-yard run. He had some really nice catches out of the backfield,
Definitely.
Turned upfield. So, yeah, and I'll say Braxton Jones. I think the tackles, both of them, Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright, held up. Interior of the line, not so much.
Yeah. I'm going to say some of the ones that I think everybody wants to hear. Justin Fields didn't look great right from the onset, but in the rest of practice looked really sharp. A couple deep balls. Him and DJ Moore have some chemistry. It is fun to watch.
Now that you've seen it the first time, you can say, right?
It was special at times. Yeah, it was a bummer about EQ. He had a couple really great plays. I was thinking about
Chase Claypool got hurt.
A
couple injuries today.
Yeah. So Khalil Herbert looks smooth running the ball. A couple nice easy catches, dump offs from Justin Fields, and this was fun. Thanks, Brendan.
Oh, of course, man.
Hey, check out Bear Down Chicago podcast, everybody. We don't get a ton of chances to do stuff like that, the video and all that. So it was a really cool experience. I know going to Hallis Hall, I know we've talked about this endlessly, Jack, that Olivet Nazarene University, they did a great job. But man, I had that experience when you're seeing the parking lot that you've seen so many times on, 1920 Football Drive. And, you're seeing all the videos of all these, these famous Bears coaches and players walking in for the first time and seeing the training facilities that you're watching on the news. Like, it was surreal and so much cooler than I expected. I think this is a better experience personally. What did you think about it?
Well, first of all, we cannot just brush by the ridiculous cuteness that your daughter exhibited in her debut on this show, right? Like
I
that's
am
pretty,
indoctrinating her as best I possibly can.
as you
So thank you,
should.
Heidi. Yes.
You should. That was really sweet. So I was going to ask you, Ryan, previously, when was the last time that you had been to camp? Was it as Olivet or?
It's been a while,
Yeah.
with COVID and having
Right.
our daughter, it hasn't worked out. And so my amazingly patient wife, who is still watching my daughter right now as we're doing this podcast, gave me the opportunity to go with Brendan. And yeah, it was just such a cool experience.
And the only reason I asked was so that I could kind of hear you juxtapose the two experiences, because it is obviously a much different experience here, locally. And you said overall you liked it better at Alice Hall.
I do, I totally get the, it's funny because we actually got to talk to Tom Waddle. And I asked him that very question just because I was curious. And folks, you'll have to give me one more second here with the technology. Again, for all of our audio only listeners, you are missing just a little bit here. And so just give me 1 second, folks. Sorry, technical difficulties. And so, yes, absolutely.
So
right. So Tom Waddle, it was awesome to get a chance to talk to him. And I asked him that very question. Hey, what did you think, about it? And, what would you prefer? And he said, as a player, I wanted to be I wanted to be away from Hallis Hall. It was the time to go to work, he said, but now covering the Bears, he ended up driving his daughter's like 50cc scooter to Hallis Hall and appreciated it so much more. I get the advantage of it, but now with like players getting a chance to stay in their houses, to stay while they're at camp. And there's just so many benefits to it being done at Hallis Hall. Personally, that's just where I'm at.
Yeah. And I think, I've just come down on the side of saying that while I do think it's probably in every way, shape, and form better for the team, the players, the coaches, I just think all of it was a bit better for the fans. And not that it's, it's not right out of the gate. The first time I went to Alice Hall, I was, had glowing reviews about the Bears doing it right. They really do get a lot of it right. It's an event without a doubt. But the sheer fact of the size of the facility makes it so that there is less tickets available and less opportunity for people to be there. And in that way, just a lot more kids that were down at Olivet. Not a big beef, really. Not a big beef. Just a difference.
No, I totally get it. But again, seeing this image when you walk up, seeing their practice fields, which are immaculate, which they should be. They're an NFL franchise. I know Pro Football Focus just put out that they're one of the top 10 most, profitable franchises, as they should be. I thought this was fantastic. Didn't realize there's a player, his last name 46 Deng. Just some really cool DB drills that we were watching when we were there. Quarterbacks, Andrew Janico. I know I'm the quarterback coach for the Chicago Bears. He had some really cool drills. Jack, I was thinking a lot about you during some of those drills because he was so animated. He was so all over the place. And the things that he was doing, it seemed to make sense. Like, let him, let the quarterback fire off a couple passes. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere is just yelling and screaming at them, because their concentration. I was really interested to kind of watch how that whole thing worked. And again, we had such a great experience. We had a chance to actually interact with some of our listeners, which I'll talk about it when we get to shout outs. It was a cool experience and it was neat. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, and you had a great day, but yeah, I do think, we just talked a little bit about like the expertise that it takes to create a practice plan. And it seems like the staff has it down. I was interested in, and I wonder if we would ever get to see what the rest of the day looks like for the guys. I'm sure that they get a day's itinerary, and there's probably like pre-practice meetings and such in training room time, on the field at this particular time, and then maybe treatment afterwards. And then is there downtime and then films and meetings? I just, what are they doing meals together? It'd be cool to see some of the pull back the curtain moments for the rest of the day for the guys.
Absolutely. We got to get a Hard Knocks, which I know a lot of Bears fans don't want, but I think it would be fun. Jack, we got a packed episode on Sunday, and this episode has gone for quite a while. Anything that we missed that we have to be talking about?
Just maybe a little bit with Nate Davis, and you mentioned it with the offensive line, and when you and Brendan, posted your video, it's maybe starting to get to a little bit of a concern, where, if Nate Davis isn't a constant and we're worried about Tevin Jenkins and his injuries and we don't love the center, I'm really going to be interested to see how that progresses.
Yes, I think we're all kind of worried about it. Just Bruja7 coming with a comment. Fantastic work, training camp content and everything else. Sublime. Thank you. I saw your questions that you had to Adam Rank and Brendan Shagru, Bruja. So thank you for your phenomenal questions and your support. Seriously, it was just such a cool experience. Injuries are a concern, but I think injuries are a concern for everywhere. It's just, there's not a lot of depth on that offensive line. So that part is definitely worrisome. Jack, we got to get out of here. This has been an awesome episode. Dude, I miss having these one-on-ones. We don't do enough of this. Not saying that we want to kick out those other guys. But it's just
how it all started, right?
It's fun.
This is the origin story.
Yeah, absolutely.
You and I just going back and forth over the water cooler.
A quick shout out to my guy, John White, who just chimed in. 27 years in prison for something he didn't do. One of the most amazing human beings I've ever met in my entire life. Shout out to you, John White. So shout outs, Jack. Let's do shout outs, you and then me, and let's get out of here, buddy.
One interaction I've had in the last couple of days, that I thought I wanted to shout out was Ross. Check that. Russ Carnuth. Hopefully I've got that correct. Russ. He's at Shy Bulls 2333. Sorry, that was a lot for me to get out for some reason. So thanks. Anytime we get these interactions with folks on Twitter, we do greatly enjoy it. And Ryan, I do apologize to you because you have to hear this all the time. But I shout out to my friend Patrick Burns and his wife Melissa, who were the ones who got me to listen to the first episode of Smartless. I know I talk about it all the time.
It's a great podcast.
It's given me great joy and laughter as I walk and I listen. And we went and saw them, live in Chicago. And I've watched the documentary. And I just, I know that they're not on our radar in any way, shape, or form. But if you're not listening to Smartless, it's, it is really outstanding to listen to. It's a lot of fun. And it's very, very, very funny. And if there's some way that Jason Bateman and I can become close personal friends, if someone could get that done for me, it would be a dream come true, to be honest.
You are quite the fanboy, for sure. You'll have to excuse me. I have a lot of shout outs. Just one more time to my wife, Kate, my neighbors, Richard and Shar, who just are allowing me to have this space and allowing this to happen today. I think they might be watching right now. So just seriously appreciate you guys so very much. Wifey and I went to this place called Olive and Vinny's. And this woman, Karen, who owns the shop, we're like, hey, we want a gift for our neighbors because, they're allowing us to use their space while home renovation is. This woman put together the most thoughtful, gift basket idea. Insane. If you happen to be in the western suburbs, anywhere near the western suburbs, and especially if you're not somebody who's like, oh, what do I get someone maybe that doesn't drink alcohol? Because, you get a bottle of wine as a housewarming present and you're like, they don't drink. Go to Olive and Vinny's, talk to Karen, tell them that Ryan from the Bear Down Chicago podcast sent you. This woman is incredible. You got to try to give her some business. Please, please, please. The last one. And this one is so cool. So Rob and Chris, I got a chance to talk to them at camp and they recognized me and Brendan from the podcast and they supported us and they watch all the things that we do. And it was the coolest thing ever. And so seriously, Rob and Chris, thank you so much for all of you listening. It means more than we can ever possibly say, right? When the fact that people are hanging out, that for us at 3:00 on a Friday, that there are people watching this podcast right now and interacting with us. Jack, I mean, you know me, dude. I'm legit at a loss for words. We've been doing this for a couple years now, and we built a following and some listeners, and it's really cool, dude. It's really cool.
Very much so. Very much so.
So we appreciate you all. If you like this podcast, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit us with a 5-star review because that really helps to widen our audience. Please come in on Sunday night, 7:30 Chicago time. We have a former Chicago Bear that was on the 2006 Super Bowl team. I can't say championship. I wanted to say championship, but the 2006 Super Bowl team, a phenomenal player, and he's doing some really cool things with ESPN 1000. I think at this point I've given away for some of you, but he is so cool. So please come and check that out. Follow us on all of our socials because that stuff is important. But for Jack Wright, Brendan Chagru, Logan Bradley, Patrick Sheldon, I am Ryan Dangle. Folks, thank you so very much for hanging out with us. And as always, bear down, Chicago.